Welcome to Void of Rules, where nightmares have no boundaries. In this channel, we explore the darkest corners of horror that most dare not enter. Every video takes you deeper into the shadows where forgotten terrors wait. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers by year's end. The void hungers for new souls. And now, let's dive into the void. I am death. Not a metaphor, not a character, but the actual entity that has existed since the first living thing drew its final breath. The Grim Reaper, the final harvester, the end of all things. Before I tell you about the diner, you should understand what I was. For countless millennia, I moved through existence unseen, except by those whose time had come. I wore no black hood, carried no scythe. Those are human inventions. Attempts to give form to the formless. In truth, I was more like a thought than a being, a cosmic certainty, given consciousness. Neither cruel nor kind, simply necessary. I remember them all, every soul I've ever collected. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt, their bodies preserved, but their essence departing at my touch. Roman emperors who built monuments to their own immortality, only to whisper too soon when I appeared. Peasants and kings, warriors and poets, the virtuous and the wicked, all equal before me. For eons I performed my duty without question, collecting souls when their time came, guiding them to whatever waited beyond. I was efficient, dispassionate, and utterly removed from the lives I ended. Why would I care? Death is merely transition, and I am merely its agent. I witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. I hovered over battlefields where thousands died in a single day, their souls rising like a fog. I visited hospital rooms where the elderly departed peacefully, surrounded by generations they had created. I arrived at accident scenes where lives were cut short in an instant of twisted metal and shattered glass. Through it all, I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse, no satisfaction. It wasn't callousness. It was my nature. Would you expect gravity to feel guilty for causing a child to fall? Would you expect time to apologize for bringing wrinkles to a beautiful face? I was a constant, a force, an inevitability. Or at least that's how it used to be. Now I wear an apron. I carry plates of eggs and bacon. I refill coffee cups and wipe down sticky tabletops. I take orders and make small talk and remember which customers prefer their toast barely warmed and which want it nearly burnt. I work at a diner called The Final Stop. It exists in a pocket dimension, a sliver of reality wedged between life and death. From the outside it looks like a classic roadside eatery. Chrome-plated exterior, neon signs buzzing in the perpetual twilight, windows that glow with warm yellow light. The parking lot is always half full with vehicles from different eras, though no one ever sees patrons entering or leaving. Inside, red vinyl booths line the walls. A checkerboard floor stretches from the entrance to the counter. A jukebox in the corner plays forgotten melodies that sound familiar to everyone, but that no one can quite name. The air smells of coffee that never gets cold, and pie that's always fresh from the oven. The windows are perhaps the strangest feature. Each patron who looks outside sees something different. Their childhood home, a beloved vacation spot, the place where they fell in love. The view is always of somewhere that mattered deeply to them in life. Yes, in life, because every customer who enters The Final Stop is recently deceased. This diner serves as a transitional space, a moment of comfort and reflection before souls continue their journey beyond. The patrons don't always realize they're dead. Some suspect it. Others are in complete denial. But all of them are hungry in a way that has nothing to do with food. They hunger for understanding, for closure, for one last taste of what made them human. The businessman who worked 80-hour weeks hungers for the simple pleasure of a leisurely breakfast. The mother who died before her children were grown, hungers for the family dinners she'll never experience. The addict who overdosed hungers for the clean simplicity of a warm meal, without chemical enhancement. I've observed that most souls arrive in a state that mirrors their death. Those who died suddenly appear, confused, disoriented. Those who suffered long illnesses often arrive with a sense of relief. The suicides are the most difficult. A complex mixture of regret, defiance, and confusion that makes their transition particularly challenging. Where am I? They often ask, looking around at the vintage Americana decor that somehow feels familiar to everyone, regardless of their cultural background. The final stop, I always answer, best coffee this side of existence. Can I interest you in today's special? I was assigned to work here as punishment. I made a mistake, a grave one. I reaped the wrong soul at the wrong time, creating a ripple effect through the cosmic order. It happened in a hospital. 2 lives hanging by threads in adjacent rooms, an elderly professor who had lived a full life, and a young prodigy who had just begun to realize her potential. Their life forces were so similar, both brilliant minds with an uncommon understanding of the universe's mysteries. For the first time in my existence, I hesitated, confused by the similarity of their essences. I took the wrong one. The professor was meant to die that night. The girl was destined for discoveries that would have altered humanity's understanding of existence. By the time I realized my error, it was too late. The girl's soul had already crossed over, and the professor lived another decade, his extra time a cosmic anomaly that sent ripples through reality. Important discoveries delayed, meetings that should have happened rendered impossible, children who should have been born never conceived. My punishment was fitting. Serve the dead before claiming them. Learn what it means to ease their passing, instead of simply facilitating it. Experience the complexity of endings rather than merely enforcing them. The manager gave me the rules my first day. The manager is difficult to describe. An entity older than me, older perhaps than existence itself. They appear as whatever makes each observer most uncomfortable. Not frightening, necessarily, but unsettling in a profound way. To me, they look like a person made of smoke that never quite settles into a definite form, with eyes that reflect the inside of your mind back at you. The rules were written on weathered parchment in ink that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. 8 rules. Simple enough, or so I thought. Rule number 1. Greet each customer by their full name, but never acknowledge how they died. This sounds straightforward, until you realize I can see exactly how each person died. It's written all over them, not in wounds or injuries, but in a sort of echo that surrounds them, replaying their final moments like a film negative superimposed over their form. The businessman with his heart attack at his desk, the grandmother who went peacefully in her sleep, the teenager who misjudged the curve on a rainy night. I see the truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel surrounded by the phantom outlines of crushed metal. The drowned child trails water that never quite touches the floor. The cancer patient carries invisible tumors that bloom like dark flowers across their aura. The soldier who died in combat still ducks from bullets only he can hear. The hardest are those who died by violence. They arrive distracted, constantly looking over their shoulders, hands raised defensively. They flinch at sudden movements, eyes darting to exits. Their death echoes are jagged, chaotic, full of confusion and betrayal. William Arthur Peterson, I might say to the man still struggling to breathe through lungs that were filled with water an hour ago. Welcome to the final stop. Table for 1 today. Mr. Peterson, still feeling the effects of your drowning, let me get you a towel. How was your swim? Looks like it didn't end well. Just his name, a welcome, and a gentle guidance toward acceptance. If they ask about their death, I must change the subject immediately. Those who become fixated on their own end are doomed to relive it, experiencing the pain and fear in an endless loop. I've seen it happen only once. The woman's name was Dorothy Keller. She demanded to know why she was here, insisted I tell her what had happened. Before I could stop her, she began to clutch her throat, gasping for air, reliving the anaphylactic shock that had killed her. The manager appeared instantly, led her through the kitchen doors, and I never saw her again. Rule number 2, every patron must order something from the menu, even if they don't eat it. The menu is different for each customer. When they open it, they see exactly what their soul needs. Comfort foods from childhood, exotic dishes they always wanted to try, but never did. The last meal they ate before a pivotal life moment. I've served everything from elaborate 7-course French dinners to simple bowls of tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. An opera singer who dedicated her life to her art finds a menu filled with all the rich foods she denied herself to maintain her voice. A man who worked 3 jobs to put his children through college sees the fancy steaks he could never afford. A woman who died during childbirth finds a menu of foods recommended during pregnancy, each one guaranteed not to cause nausea. The menu knows. That's the only way I can explain it. The laminated pages somehow peer into the soul and reflect back what was most desired, most needed, most healing. One patron, a former judge named Howard Griffith, opened his menu to find only photographs of meals his victims had eaten before sentencing. He had been corrupt, sending innocent people to prison for bribes. His hands trembled as he turned the pages, each dish labelled not with a price but with years of a human life. I stood silently as he wept, finally ordering the Mercy Special, scribbled in his own handwriting on the back page. Another customer, a young woman named Rebecca Liang, found a menu filled with multi-course meals from her Chinese heritage, dishes her immigrant parents had prepared, but that she had rejected in her desire to assimilate. She ordered everything, tears streaming down her face as she recognized the love embedded in those recipes, the connection to ancestry she had severed and could now never restore. Samuel Thornton refused to order once. A stubborn man in life, he remained so in death. "I'm not hungry," he insisted. "I won't be tricked into paying for food I don't want." I explained there was no cost, but he folded his arms and pressed his lips together. Within minutes he began to fade, becoming translucent, then transparent. His voice grew fainter as he called for help. By the time he changed his mind and tried to order the pot roast he secretly wanted, it was too late. He's still here, a barely perceptible outline in booth 7. Sometimes when the diner is quiet, you can hear him whispering his order over and over. Rule number 3, never serve food after midnight or before 3 a.m. During those hours, something else uses the kitchen. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know. The sounds that emerge during that time aren't anything a human throat could make, or any throat at all for that matter. Wet, sliding noises, rhythmic thumping, whispers in languages that hurt the mind. One night, out of curiosity, I pressed my ear against the kitchen door during the forbidden hours. The sounds intensified, bubbling liquids that seemed to be conversing with each other, the scrape of utensils against surfaces that responded with sighs, a humming that resonated in my bones rather than my ears. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the manager said suddenly beside me, though I hadn't heard them approach. Some mysteries are best left unexplored. "What are they making in there?" I asked. The manager's smoke form rippled in what might have been amusement. "Not all food is for souls," they said. "Some is for things that have never been alive and thus can never die." I asked no more questions after that, but on quiet nights, I sometimes hear the kitchen door creak open at precisely midnight. Never enough to see inside, just enough to let something out, or perhaps to let something in. Frank and Eliza Montgomery arrived at 12:15 a.m., newly deceased, hit by a drunk driver while walking home from their anniversary dinner. I told them the kitchen was closed. Frank insisted. He'd been a demanding man in life, used to getting his way. I'm ashamed to say I gave in. Their story touched me. 50 years of marriage cut short in an instant. I brought them pancakes that looked normal, smelled normal. They took their first bites simultaneously. The transformation was immediate and horrifying. The food consumed them from the inside out, their bodies folding inward like paper burning at accelerated speed. Their mouths opened in silent screams as they collapsed into nothing, leaving only 2 empty chairs and untouched silverware. The manager appeared, stared at me with those mirror eyes, and simply said, "Now you understand." Rule number 4. If a patron's reflection in the silverware doesn't match their appearance, remove the silverware immediately and apologize. The silverware at the final stop is pure silver, polished to a mirror shine. In its reflection, patrons don't see their physical selves but their souls. Most look relatively similar, perhaps younger or older, but recognizable. Others appear radically different. A gentle elderly woman might appear as a warrior. A tough construction worker might look like a poet. The reflections often reveal the person's truest self, stripped of societal expectations and the compromises required by survival. The businessman who secretly yearned to be an artist sees a paint-splattered figure holding a brush. The housewife who suppressed her intellectual gifts glimpses a woman surrounded by academic tomes. The soldier who fought in wars he didn't believe in catches sight of a peaceful monk. I've seen beautiful revelations unfold through these reflections. A shy man who died believing he had accomplished nothing gasped when he saw his reflection, a figure surrounded by threads of light connecting to hundreds of other people, representing all the lives he had touched with small kindnesses he thought insignificant. A woman who had struggled with addiction saw herself whole and radiant, finally free of the burdens that had haunted her. I've also seen patrons recognize unflattering truths. The manipulator confronted with a puppet master pulling strings, the abuser faced with a monster wearing his face, the narcissist seeing only a hollow shell. These moments require careful handling, gentle distractions, quick removal of the offending silverware, soothing words to guide them past self-recognition that could become self-destruction. Occasionally the reflection reveals something monstrous, twisted by hatred or cruelty or pain. These are souls that have rejected goodness so thoroughly that their essence has been deformed. If they catch a glimpse of this truth, they become volatile, dangerous to themselves and others. Alan Price was an unassuming, middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning hair. In the spoon beside his coffee cup, his reflection had jagged teeth and hollow pits for eyes. When he leaned forward to examine a spot on the table, he saw himself. His scream shattered every light bulb in the diner. He began to transform, his physical form morphing to match his soul's reality. I had to recite the calming phrases the manager taught me, ancient words that ease the transition of even the most troubled souls. It took hours, and even now, his booth remains colder than the others. Rule number 5, never allow a living person to enter the diner. The living emit a distinctive sound, a ticking like a clock counting down. Only I can hear it. If someone living approaches, I must lock the doors and dim the lights until they leave. If they somehow gain entry, I must convince them to depart immediately. The ticking varies from person to person. Some tick with the steady rhythm of a grandfather clock, each second measured and predictable. These are people whose lives will most likely unfold as cosmic order intends. Others tick erratically, speeding up and slowing down at random intervals. Souls whose paths are volatile, whose deaths might come at any moment or be postponed through unlikely circumstances. I've learned to distinguish the ticking of the elderly, soft like a watch running low on battery, from children, quick and bright as a new timepiece, from the terminally ill, irregular with skipped beats and sudden accelerations. Each unique rhythm tells a story of how much time remains, though even I cannot know exactly when the ticking will stop. The diner is shielded from normal perception. Most living people drive past without noticing it, their eyes sliding from the gas station on one side to the abandoned lot on the other, never registering the neon lights between. Those who can see it are usually close to death themselves, or possess a sensitivity to the liminal spaces between worlds. Psychics, mediums, people who have had near-death experiences and returned slightly out of phase with reality. A living woman named Lily entered once while I was busy with a rush of patrons. By the time I noticed her, she had already ordered a cup of coffee. I rushed to her table, but it was too late. She had taken a sip. The effect was subtle but immediate. A thread of silver light extended from her chest, connecting her to the diner itself. She left eventually, but the thread remained, stretching infinitely thin, but never breaking. 3 days later, she returned, confused about why she felt compelled to drive 2 hours to visit a diner she barely remembered. She's returned every day since, caught in a liminal state, not quite alive anymore, but not dead either. She sits at the same booth, orders the same coffee, and stares out the window at a view only she can see. The manager says there's nothing to be done. She'll remain tethered to the final stop until her natural death, at which point she'll simply stay. Rule number 6. When the jukebox plays the last song, escort all patrons to the back exit immediately. The last song has no title on the jukebox display. It appears as a blank selection, and it plays seemingly at random. To each patron, it sounds different. The music that would have been played at their funeral, had they been able to choose. A solemn hymn, a classical masterpiece, a rock anthem, a tender lullaby. I hear it differently as well. To me, it's not music, but a vibration, a tremor in the fabric of reality. It makes the edges of the diner blur, the walls becoming momentarily transparent. Through them, I can glimpse other realms, gardens of crystal flowers, oceans of liquid light, forests where the trees are made of whispers, the spaces beyond where souls journey after their brief stop here. The jukebox itself is a mystery. No one fills it with coins. No one selects the songs that play throughout the day. The music simply emerges, appropriate to the moment, setting the mood for whatever transition is taking place. Upbeat jazz for the soul who needs cheering. Soft piano for one who requires calming. Familiar pop songs for those who resist acknowledging their new state. The jukebox knows each patron's history with music. The songs that were playing during first kisses, wedding dances, road trips, moments of profound solitude. It selects melodies that evoke precisely the emotion needed for that soul's journey. But when it plays the last song, everything changes. The lights dim slightly. The windows show only darkness. The coffee grows cold in an instant. And something vast presses against the diner's boundaries, something hungry for those who linger too long in this liminal space. The song signals that the veil between dimensions is thinning. Anyone remaining in the diner after the song ends risks being erased from existence, not moved to an afterlife, but completely unmade. The first time it played, I didn't understand the urgency. I casually mentioned to the patrons that we were closing soon. Most left, but an elderly man named George Wilson was savouring his apple pie, determined to finish every crumb. The song ended. The lights flickered. George looked up at me, with sudden terror in his eyes as his edges began to blur. "I can't feel anything," he said, and then he unravelled like a sweater, being pulled apart, strand by strand, until nothing remained but an empty booth and a half-eaten slice of pie. Now when the last song plays, I move with supernatural speed, ushering everyone through the rear exit to the path beyond. I don't know where the path leads. That's not part of my punishment. Rule number 7. Always wipe the tables with the special cloth soaked in moon water and grave soil. The tables at the final stop absorb the memories and emotions of those who sit at them. Joy, regret, love, hatred, all of it sinks into the wood like water into sand. Without proper cleaning, these emotional residues manifest as phantoms, shadowy figures that replay moments of intense feeling. The tables themselves are older than they appear. Beneath the veneer of 1950s diner-style formica lies wood that has witnessed centuries of human experience. Each table was constructed from a different source, one from the floorboards of a medieval plague hospital, another from a Wild West gallows platform, a third from the deck of a ship that sank with all hands. Wood that has already absorbed death, repurposed to ease the transition of newly departed souls. The moon water must be collected during a full moon, when the barrier between worlds is thinnest. The grave soil comes from 100 different burial grounds, potters' fields and royal crypts, mass graves and solitary mountain cairns, ancient burial mounds and modern mausoleums. This mixture creates a solution that can absorb emotional residue without becoming saturated. The manager prepares the cloths personally, performing rituals I'm not permitted to witness. Once a month, a stack of freshly soaked cloths appears in the supply closet, each one folded into an intricate pattern that must be maintained until use. The cleaning itself is a form of ritual magic. Counterclockwise motion represents the unwinding of time, the release of attachment. 7 rotations symbolize completion, the perfect number for a perfect ending. With each wipe, the cloth darkens slightly as it absorbs the emotional imprints. The cloth must be dampened with water collected under a full moon and mixed with soil from 100 different graves. Each table must be wiped counterclockwise exactly 7 times. No more, no less. I made a careless mistake once. Distracted by a difficult patron, I wiped table 12 clockwise. That night, as I was closing up, I began to experience memories that weren't mine. A first kiss beneath a cherry tree. The birth of a child with eyes like the summer sky. A betrayal that felt like a knife between the ribs. They came faster and faster until I could no longer distinguish between these foreign memories and my own experiences. For what felt like days, I was lost in a whirlpool of borrowed lives. The manager found me huddled beneath the table, mumbling names of people I'd never met. They performed some ritual I couldn't comprehend, drawing the memories out of me like poison from a wound. The memories must go somewhere, they explained, either into the cloth or into you. Rule number 8. Never, under any circumstances, look into the manager's office on Wednesday evenings. The manager's office is at the back of the diner, past the kitchen. Its door is made of dark wood that doesn't match the rest of the decor. There is no nameplate, no window, nothing to indicate what lies beyond. On Wednesday evenings, the manager meets with entities that maintain the cosmic balance. The only warning is the sound of bells, soft silver chimes that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. When the bells ring, all staff must close their eyes until the sound stops, no matter what they're doing. The door to the office changes subtly on those evenings. The wood grain shifts into patterns that resemble writing in a language too ancient for even me to recognize. The air around it shimmers with colors that don't exist in the human spectrum. The temperature drops so dramatically that frost sometimes forms on the surrounding walls, melting quickly once the meetings conclude. Other staff have their theories about these meetings. The short order cook, who himself appears to be the ghost of a man who died in a kitchen fire decades ago, believes the manager is negotiating with the fundamental forces of reality. The waitress who works the morning shift, a banshee who gave up whaling to pursue a service industry career, thinks the manager is reporting to whatever higher power governs death itself. I've noticed small changes after these Wednesday meetings. The next day, certain souls who should have arrived never appear. Occasionally, someone scheduled for transition gets a reprieve, their death postponed through seemingly random circumstance. Once, following a particularly long meeting that made the bells ring for nearly an hour, an entire busload of accident victims who should have arrived were simply redirected. I never learned where they went. The mystery of these meetings tormented me from my first day. What entities could be powerful enough to command the respect of someone who commanded me? What decisions were being made behind that dark wooden door? What secrets of existence might I learn if I dared to look? No one has ever told me what happens if you look. Some rules don't need the threat of consequences spelled out. Some warnings carry their weight in the tone of voice alone. The way the manager said "never" was enough to ensure my compliance until today. The diner has been unusual lately. Temporal distortions more frequent and severe. The jukebox skipping, almost playing the last song but stopping just short. The kitchen sounds audible even outside the forbidden hours. The cloth for the tables smelling of rot instead of grave soil, and the manager absent more often than not, leaving cryptic notes rather than direct instructions. Then came the accident in the living world. A bridge collapse during rush hour. Dozens of casualties arriving almost simultaneously. The diner stretching beyond its normal dimensions to accommodate them. I was overwhelmed, struggling to follow all the rules, with so many customers in various states of denial and distress. They poured through the entrance in waves, a young mother clutching a phantom car seat, a businessman still checking his watch and muttering about a missed meeting, a group of college students in animated conversation about the concert they were heading to. None of them fully registered their transition yet. The air was thick with confusion and the electric charge of sudden death. The diner expanded to accommodate them all, booths multiplying along the walls, the counter extending until it curved out of sight. The normal staff couldn't manage this influx alone. Temporary workers appeared, entities I'd never seen before, dressed in diner uniforms but moving with the ethereal grace of beings far older than this establishment. I greeted each new arrival by their full name, the information appearing in my mind the moment they crossed the threshold. Jennifer Lynn Howard, Marcus James Wellington, Aisha Fatima Darzi. Dozens of names, dozens of stories suddenly cut short, dozens of deaths I had to carefully avoid mentioning as I seated them at tables that materialized as needed. The jukebox played soothing melodies different for each patron, yet somehow harmonizing into a cohesive soundtrack. The menus shifted rapidly, pages flipping and reforming as each person opened them. The kitchen worked at impossible speed, dishes emerging fully formed as if they bypassed the cooking process entirely. Through it all, the manager was absent. A note on their door read simply, "Handling the paperwork for this one. You're in charge until I return." Exhausted after the rush, I was wiping down the tables when I heard the bells. My first thought was confusion. It wasn't Wednesday, was it? With the time distortions lately, it was hard to keep track. I assumed it was another anomaly, another sign of the growing instability. As I continued cleaning, I realized with horror that I was wiping clockwise instead of counterclockwise, already breaking one rule, already feeling the first foreign memories seeping into my consciousness. I tried to focus, to correct my motion, when I noticed the manager's door was ajar. It's difficult to explain what happened next. Fatigue, confusion, curiosity. Perhaps all three led me to that fatal error. Despite the ringing bells, despite the explicit rule, I looked into the office. What I saw defies description in human language. Cosmic entities arranged in a pattern that hurt to perceive. The manager at the center, their smoke form now expanded to fill the room, tendrils extending to touch each entity in turn. And on a table made of what looked like condensed darkness, a diagram, a plan for the end of death itself. They noticed me immediately. Everything froze. The bells stopped. The entities turned their attention toward me, though turned isn't quite right, as they had no discernible faces or fronts, merely an overwhelming sense of focus. The manager emerged from the office, their form now solid in a way it had never been before. No longer smoke and suggestion, but a defined shape that hurt to look at directly, angles that shouldn't connect, limbs that bent in directions physics didn't allow, a face that seemed to contain multiple faces overlapping. The cosmic entities in the room turned their attention toward me, or what I perceived as attention, though they had no features I could identify as eyes. They were collections of concepts rather than beings. One seemed made of endings and beginnings twisted together into a Mobius strip of causality. Another appeared to be time itself folded into a shape that allowed it to observe its own passage. "It is Wednesday," the manager said simply. "Time distortions. You lost track." I tried to apologize, to explain, but they held up a hand, or what served as a hand, 5 appendages that constantly shifted between fingers, branches, light beams, and things I had no name for. "It doesn't matter now. You were always going to look. That's how the cycle renews." The entities made no sound, but I felt their agreement ripple through reality itself. This wasn't an accident or a failure on my part. It was inevitable, scripted, part of a pattern so vast that even I, death itself, was merely a component rather than an observer. Cycle. My voice sounded distant, as if coming from somewhere else. "Death itself must die for the cosmic order to continue," the manager explained. "Your punishment was never about learning empathy. You were being prepared as a sacrifice." Understanding dawned like a cold sunrise. The rules were designed to gradually weaken your powers, yes. Your error with rules 7 and 8 has completed the ritual. I'm sorry and grateful. I felt it beginning then, the unmaking, not like the patrons who vanished when the last song ended, something deeper, more fundamental. My essence dispersing not into nothingness, but into everything. Every atom coming undone, every moment of my existence stretching thin and then snapping. As I dissolved, fragmented consciousness drifting apart, I observed a new figure taking form from the dissipating particles of my being. Tall, cloaked, with hands that had never known labour now reaching for the apron I had worn. The new death, born from my ending. I recognized something in this entity, a familiar essence, an echo of myself. Not a continuation, but a variation on the same theme. Like me, they would be dispassionate at first. Like me, they would learn. Like me, they would eventually look through that door on a Wednesday evening, completing the cycle anew. In my fading awareness, I glimpsed other versions of myself, past deaths who had served at the final stop, made the same mistake, dissolved into the cosmic pattern. Thousands of iterations, each slightly different but following the same basic arc. The revelation both horrified and comforted me. I was not the first. I would not be the last. The role of death was eternal, even if its individual manifestations were not. The manager handed them the rule sheet, now with a 9th rule added at the bottom. Rule number 9, never forget what happened to your predecessor. I understood then that each death carried forward some fragment of those who came before. Each inherited not just the role but the accumulated wisdom, the growing empathy, the deepening understanding of what it means to end. We were not separate entities but movements in an endless symphony, each playing our part before yielding to the next musician. The new death's eyes met mine as my essence continued to disperse. In that momentary connection, I passed along everything I had learned, the importance of a kind word to a confused soul, the power of a well-timed cup of coffee, the way a simple meal could ease the most difficult transition. The technical aspects of the job would come naturally to them, but the compassion, that was the true inheritance. the lesson each death must learn and then pass on. My last awareness was of the new death greeting a customer at the door. Full name spoken with respect, cause of death tactfully ignored. The cycle beginning again, as it had countless times before, and would countless times again. I am death no longer. I'm becoming something else, something more and less simultaneously. As the last fragments of my consciousness fade, I wonder if the new death will make the same choices, follow the same path, break the same rules when Wednesday comes. The final stop remains open for business, serving the dead before they depart. The jukebox plays forgotten melodies. The coffee never goes cold. Through my dissolving awareness, I glimpse the diner from angles impossible for any single consciousness to perceive. I see its true nature, not just a way station between states, but a nexus point where realities intersect, where the boundaries between life and death, existence and non-existence blur and overlap. I see the patrons who have passed through over eons, their souls briefly illuminated by the diner's light before continuing their journey. I see the staff in their true forms, beings who chose to serve in this liminal space for reasons of their own. The cook with his eternal flame, the waitress who collects sorrows like others collect stamps, the dishwasher whose hands have touched the vessels of a million last meals, and the manager. Now, at last, I understand them. Not a cruel taskmaster, not a dispassionate cosmic functionary, but a guardian, the keeper of this delicate crossroads, this place where endings transform into beginnings, the one who ensures that the difficult transition from being to non-being has a moment of grace, a final taste of what made existence precious. I see the pattern now, the grand design that even I, as death, was too limited to comprehend. Each incarnation of death serves at the diner, learns empathy, breaks the rules, and dissolves, contributing their essence to the next cycle. With each iteration, death becomes more compassionate, more understanding of the souls it must claim. The dissolution isn't punishment, it's evolution. As my consciousness expands in its final moments, spreading thin across multiple planes of existence, I realize I'm not ending, but transforming. Parts of me will incorporate into the new death, parts will join the great cosmic pattern that governs all transitions, and some small spark will remain aware, observing from a perspective no single entity could maintain. I see the next death greeting their first customer, fumbling slightly with the apron strings, uncertain in this new role. But they'll learn as I did. They'll grow as I did. They'll break the rules when the time comes as I did. And somewhere, in some form, I'll be watching. Not just as a memory or a cautionary tale, but as an invisible presence, a whisper of guidance when the night grows long and the patrons become difficult. When the jukebox plays the last song, perhaps they'll feel me helping to usher the souls to safety, lending my experience to their developing skills. The final stop exists outside normal time and space. There is no true ending here, only transition, the specialty of the house. The cycle will continue, death will evolve, and somewhere in the pattern of existence, I continue, dispersed but not destroyed, ended but not concluded. Just another patron passing through. And yet, so much more. In my final awareness, I watch as a confused soul enters the diner, looking around with the disorientation of the newly deceased. The new death approaches, notebook in hand, ready to take their order. "Welcome to the final stop," they say, voice still uncertain but gaining confidence with each word. "Best coffee this side of existence. Can I interest you in today's special?" The cycle begins again. The rules remain posted behind the counter, shifting slightly when no one is looking directly at them. The jukebox selects a gentle melody. Outside the windows, landscapes unique to each observer shimmer in the perpetual twilight. And somewhere, in the spaces between moments, in the pause between heartbeats, in the silence between musical notes, What was once death, what was once me, observes it all, finally understanding that endings are merely transformations, and that the greatest gift is not the release from life, but the chance to savour its meaning one final time before continuing the journey. The manager glances towards the space where my consciousness lingers, a knowing look in their ever-changing eyes. They nod slightly, acknowledging my presence, my understanding, my new place in the cosmic order. I nod back, though I have no form to move. In this moment of connection, I realize that the manager too was once as I was. Death, server, observer, participant, evolved through countless cycles into something greater, something that transcends the binary of existence and non-existence. Perhaps that is my fate as well. Perhaps one day, after many deaths have served and dissolved, after many Wednesdays have come and gone, I too will solidify once more, take form, and become a manager of my own establishment. For now I am content to watch, to learn, to understand in ways I never could while bound by the limitations of a single role. I am everywhere and nowhere, in the final stop, in the steam rising from the coffee, in the melody of the jukebox, in the shadows that gather in empty booths, waiting for the next soul, seeking comfort before their final journey. The door chimes as it opens to admit another patron. The new death straightens their apron and steps forward to greet them by name. Outside, the neon sign flickers in the endless twilight, beckoning to those who have just left the world of the living. The final stop is open for business. Death is on duty. The rules are posted clearly for all to see. And I am here watching it all unfold, finally understanding that even death is not an ending, but merely another transition, another step in a journey without true conclusion. The cycle continues, the coffee never grows cold, and no one ever leaves without paying their tab in memories, in recognition, in acceptance of what comes next. Welcome to the final stop. What can I get for you today?